This is now my third attempt at recording this video. Everything from tiles falling off the roof, the dogs going crazy downstairs because of an imaginary person at the door. There isn't anyone at the door. Seagulls going nuts, and now we've got the binman out there. Oh dear, it's just been relentless this morning. So I'm trying again to try and get a good video with reasonable audio that you can hear. Right, everything's working. Right, fingers crossed this time. Past life regression. When I first qualified as a hypnotherapist in 1994-95, thereabouts, I was working at Southampton General Hospital, an enormous teaching hospital in Southampton. It gave me ready access to an unlimited supply of people who were happy to volunteer to be my guinea pigs and test subjects for anything I was doing. It amazes me how willing people are to volunteer. If you say, I'm learning hypnotherapy, I'm learning therapy, I need volunteers I can test stuff out with, your safety's not assured, and people started volunteering. So I had lots and lots of people I could work with, which was great. One of the things I was really interested in at the time was past life regression, mostly driven by my alternative interest in all the esoteric and occult stuff. I don't have any real belief in past life regression as a valid thing. As in, when somebody remembers a past life through hypnosis, is it really a past life? No. I don't doubt reincarnation is, strongly possible. But memory is very much localized in the brain. You only have to see somebody with something like Alzheimer's or a degenerative dementia condition to see that memory is not in the soul, it's very much in the brain. And that so when the brain is not functioning, lots of faculties, including language and memory, get lost. So I don't believe for a second that the human brain is remembering a past life. At the time, there was a story that was beginning that took quite a few years to gain traction, that's the word I'm looking for, in the alternative press like the Fortean Times. And this is organ memory. Essentially, there's lots of stories going around that somebody receives an organ transplant and they suddenly start to develop weird memories and ideas and interests they never had before. So one guy had a heart transplant and he discovers a love of baseball that he had never had previously, and he likes eating hot dogs, which he'd never eaten anything like that before in his life. And guess what? They trace the donor and they discover the donor was a baseball fan who loved hot dogs. Absolutely no evidence for that kind of stuff whatsoever. Organ memory. Very, very unlikely. Very unlikely indeed. But these stories are very, very popular. And in the alternative communities, alternative thinking around the New Age stuff, these sort of things help foment various belief systems about past lives, hypnotic regression, and what exactly is happening. So I approached it with a hefty degree of skepticism. And I was interested in, okay, what is it? What is actually happening for that individual? And is it in any way beneficial? And so I started testing with everybody. And I tried lots of friends, and I had a number of colleagues, and then various people who saw my posters at the hospital and volunteered. Now, to begin with, I would generally use a long induction. The beginnings of pacing and leading, all that standard rapport stuff, taking myself into trance, leading the person into trance, slowing things down, and then whatever lengthening of induction that took my fancy. There was something called the 4 Seasons induction, which was quite popular with me at the time. There was the staircase induction, where the person's going down another step and then they go down a bit further and getting deeper, all the standard deepening stuff. What I found is that long inductions are far superior to eliciting a past life regression effect. Unless you've got that 1 in 10, 1 in 20 individuals where you just go, sleep, and they're out. You know the guys on the stage show that do that weird phenomena that the vast majority of people don't do, but everyone associates with hypnosis. I still don't understand that phenomena, I can't explain it, and I've never found a convincing explanation for it yet. And I don't actually know what's happening when somebody demonstrates that behavior. I've never been able to predict it, and it's just one of those weird things. I don't know. If anyone has any thoughts, stick them in the comment section. If anyone has any recent research as to explaining what the hell's going on there, I would love to see it. Now, for the majority of individuals, doing a long induction deepens them. Yeah, great. But the majority of individuals, when they open their eyes, they go, "Oh, I'm lovely relaxed. But I think I remember everything. I don't think I was really truly out," because they're associating it with that sleep type response. Most people you can't elicit the full hypnotic phenomena, like instant, say, anesthesia, auditory or visual hallucination, the when they think they're a chicken. It's very hard to do that on the average person. That's the stage show. That's the 1 in 10, 1 in 20 individuals. However, what I found is when you do a past life regression on somebody, you can elicit full hypnotic phenomena. And that was consistent. Now, I would say be doing experimental hypnosis with an individual, say do 3 or 4 sessions, just normal hypnotherapy, hypnosis stuff, never able to elicit a hypnotic phenomena from them. Do a past life regression. Whilst they're in past life, we can get the full hypnotic range. And that is a really curious observation. I can't explain that either. So I was doing long inductions. I don't think it matters what the nature of the induction is. But within that, I would give them suggestions. So during the induction, going deeper, and I want you now to think about an important event, something that would make you smile, something you remember from last year. So setting the stage to a recent memory. Deeper, all the deepening stuff, blah, 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 blah. Now let's go back to significant events from, well, maybe something like your 18th birthday, maybe when you were 21, doesn't really matter. So we're going to put them back further. And then deeper, more journeying stuff and all the rest of it. And then I go, and now remember some happy childhood memories. And how old are you in this memory? So now I'm getting engagement. Oh, I'm 8 years old and it's my birthday. Okay, perfect, deeper. And then I'll get them to go back a little bit further in childhood, and then a little bit further. And again, getting engagement. And I'd be saying to the person, how old are you now inside this time? But I would go from how old are you in the memory, moving it to how old are you now? And so I'm 3. And I used to have to really struggle to contain myself, because I used to get the giggles when I'd have somebody who, it would take me by surprise, and they would sit there like a delighted, say, 2-year-old and start speaking like a 2-year-old. I never knew when somebody was going to do that, but often they did. And then deeper, and now go back even further to a time before memory, to a time when you were just a newborn baby. Now, at this point, it used to catch my attention because some people would re-experience birth. Now, are they really re-experiencing birth, or are they constructing a version of what they think it would be like were they to re-experience it? Who knows? I think it's the latter. I could then get people to go back to potentially in the womb prior to birth, and now prior to this life. Where were you before? And then what I would typically see, not every single time, but more often than not, the person would go through some physiological adjustments, whether it's a bit of shaking, a bit of hyperventilation, change their body position. They would do something very visible. And I would go, where are you now? Go to where, and then I could say, have a look around. So we get the person orientated to where they're at. Now, occasionally, the person would still be in the womb, in which case, great, get some details, deeper, and now back to a time before then, and go back. Now, classically, the person would then orientate to their environment and be quite confused, and sometimes they would laugh. And I would get the idea that maybe they kind of know this is, it's not 100% real. They're kind of making it up. And some people say, this is really weird. I'm just making this stuff up. Okay, well, carry on. Tell me what you can see. And orientate them to the environment. One particular individual was on a hillside. It was a lovely summer's day. And I had gotten to have a look around. And they were a bit confused. And they saw the path. And I asked them, again, leading question, presupposition, how familiar is this path? Okay, let's just follow that path and tell me where this takes you. And so off we go and explore the village. Now, I could get that person then to have conversations with the people in the village. I could ask them questions. I'd ask them their name, how old they are right now, all that kind of stuff. I could ask them key details. What's happening in the village? What's the latest news? What's the latest gossip? What do you know? What's happening in the world? And now tell me what year it is. that kind of stuff. And so you get lots of details. And what's about to happen? What's happening tomorrow? Anything fun coming up? I've got work. What is it? So I'd find out those. It is incredible how creative people are. Now, what I would often do, at that point, I didn't have a dictaphone. I wish I had. Start making notes, copious notes. Because now what I would do is start to compare details. Do the different details concord? Are they coherent with each other? Then regress the person back in that life too. Now, typically, I could get people to go through about 4 or 5 lives by doing the same process again, deeper, and now back to an earlier time. And it was amazing how people would jump. The lives they would go to weren't chronological. It wouldn't be like, okay, we've got now, and then the previous one. It would be now, previous one, oh, now there's one in between those two. And then it would jump as well. It was all sorts of... It wasn't linear, is what I'm saying. And what just fascinates me is that I don't recall a single occurrence when all of the things I was getting off people didn't concord coherently. But I've got to say, everything that people reported followed known history and stuff that everyone can relate to immediately because you've seen it in the movies, you saw it in your children's programs, you learnt it at school, all that kind of stuff. For about, I would say, a third to a half of the people I was doing this with, they would experience death in their past life, in the transition. And this is where it starts to get a bit odd. So we're regressing them back from this life to a previous one. To do so, they have to reverse their birth process, effectively, and then go back through death. And people would have some really weird reactions. One memorable one, this was actually a good friend of mine who I'd known for a long time, who turned out to be a superb hypnotic subject already, and I didn't anticipate that. In going back through to her immediate past life and then regress through that one, she experienced that she was hung from the transition of not this life, the one before it, the one before that, to the one before this life. Do try and keep up. And she had been hung for something or other. Now, whilst she's doing that, she starts choking. And I've got to be honest, at that point, I'm thinking, oh, not sure what I do here. So I just talk her through the process and I'll go back to the time before the thing. But now, here was the problem. She wanted the toilet. And so she opens her eyes and says, I need the toilet. But she's having trouble speaking. And she has gone a horrible shade of white. And she's got that mottling around, the stress response that people have. And she's got the shakes. And she actually is a little bit uncoordinated as she gets off the sofa and goes through my little tiny apartment to where the bathroom was to use the bathroom and came back. When she plopped back down on the sofa, she sat back down and went and closed her eyes. And then I carried on. She went straight back into trance, carried on where we left off. And she discovered that she'd been hung for stealing a chicken, or the standard stuff that we associate the sort of Middle Ages with and all the rest of it. And I was wondering what effect that would have for her later on. Would that be upsetting for her? Would that be problematic? Not at all, actually. She found the whole thing quite fascinating. And I found that quite reassuring because I was quite concerned at the time. Now, whilst I'm doing this, there's various people I'm working with at the hospital are coming to see me and they're going away again. And I'm beginning to acquire a bit of a reputation. Somebody came and found me. I didn't know this person directly. And she said, you're the guy who does all the hypnotic regression. She said, because I've got a phobia of water. I can never put my face underwater. I can never go swimming or go in the sea or anything else because I fear drowning. And I'm convinced it's because I drowned on the Titanic. Now, this was an absolute belief. Now, this is a very sensible, she's a senior clinician, senior nurse, doing very scientific clinical stuff with other people. And she has this belief, and she totally believes that if she can do a past life regression and overcome that, she would recover from this fear of drowning. Now, unfortunately, there were a number of circumstances at the time that meant I never got to actually do that session with her. But it did get me thinking. When it comes to belief, and somebody believes that their problem is rooted in the past life, I suspect you may well do well to do a regression to that past life, explore that. Given what I now know about metaphor and how metaphor works, and how we take experience, translate it to metaphor, work with the metaphor, and people report massive changes across multiple contexts of their ongoing experience. It makes sense to me that past life regression for many people is just a metaphorical way of working. It's just a metaphorical framework that is established through pseudo-religious, pseudo-science belief. So that makes sense to me. But what I found with all the people I worked with, no one really had any, apart from having a very interesting experience, there was nothing dramatic that they would report back in terms of any symptoms or improvements anywhere. It wasn't really a thing that was particularly impressive in terms of change work, except for one category of person. And that is people who've got a somatic expression, or some people would call it a psychosomatic condition. Whether it's something like a stress-induced IBS, anxiety rash, stress rash. I had one lady, her problem was very heavy periods, so menstrual issues with a lot of associated pain, to the point that pretty much for one day in her cycle, she'd be bedbound because it'd be so excruciating, and was regularly missing work as a result of this. She had complete alleviation of those symptoms with just one past life regression. There was nothing in those past lives in any way related to menstruation. Nothing whatsoever. And this was an individual who had gone through all sorts of traumas in terms of the deaths that were experienced in those past lives, and relived them, made them up for the first ever time, more realistically. However, it did report a complete cessation of all of those menstrual issues, and I thought that was significant. A lot of people who had minor psychosomatic ailments also found that improved. So what I found with past life regression is anything that's psychosomatic may well work. It may well work for that problem. But my concern is, what are we doing as a coach and therapist if we're suggesting to people they have past lives? So I kind of stopped doing it because I wanted to be taken more seriously in a different way, in a much more scientific way than for doing past lives. I do suspect at the time I would have made a lot more money had I have continued as a past life regressionist, simply because it's like people read their newspaper astrology. People love that kind of stuff, and it's an indulgence, and I think it's a fairly safe thing. I don't think there's any particular risks associated with it. But again, if you know of any risks associated with past life regression, apart from insanity of people's beliefs, do stick it in the comment section. So I think that's all. To summarize, long inductions interspersed with moving the person back through memory to positive times. You may want to get a few anchors in there as well, positive resource anchors. Deepening further back, with the presupposition of what do you remember to begin with, moving to how old are you in this memory, moving to how old are you, where are you, moving to a time before this life. And then, where are you? Go for where and spatial orientation prior to when are you. It's easier for people to actually explore what they can explore their imagination for what they can see before you ask them for details about, say, how old they are and so on. And then you can go back further and further and further and further. Now, to return the person back to the present day, I was split. Some people had said to me, you need to now move them sequentially through those lives, hence those important notes. Other people said you can just return them straight back to their self now. Or you may want to bring them back to their gestation period, where they now re-experience birth, making it up, and then orientate them back to the present time. I'm not convinced any of those are actually particularly important. Most of it's going to depend on the length of time you've got available and the particular beliefs and requests that the client will present. Because some people will want it that way because it concords with their beliefs. For many people, you can go, okay, so we're going to now bring the session to a close, so I'm going to ask you now to reorientate now to the time and place today. Just to remind you, it's the 15th of whatever, 2000 and whatever, and actually tell them, just to be absolutely clear where they're coming back to. And say, and in a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, and you will, of course, know the time right now is 12:33, and it's Tuesday, and blah, blah, blah. So that, I think, is probably quite important because people are quite suggestible and can be quite disorientated in time and place. So I think the only thing I think is important when bringing the person back is to actually tell them where they are, what they've been doing, like a debrief, and what time it is and date it is now. I think that's all. I was trying to keep this to 20 minutes. That is almost exactly 20 minutes. So if you have any questions, anything to add to this, stick them in the comment section. If you've got any specific questions about past life regression, any nuances, I'll see if I may not know the answer, but I'll see what I can do. Stick the questions in the comment section below. And do please click that like button. And thank you for watching this far.